Your community is going to dictate what your pizza is like. I can make this as big or as small as I want.
Save extra dough. We don't want to be wasteful.
This is not how you play the piano. Pizza inside looks like it's really doughy.
Could you take me through a hands-on demo?
Let's start from the middle, move to the outside.
We are so happy to be here today at Pizza University. We are from Slice, and we have Leo here who's going to do an amazing demo all about dough. We have a Pizza Shop Owners Forum, a Facebook group that a lot of shop owners will ask a lot of questions. Most of them will ask about dough. They're not sure how to make the dough, how to handle it. Dough is a foundation to pizza. We have to make sure we have a good base before we get started. So would you say that dough is maybe one of the more important ingredients in pizza?
I will say that dough is the most important ingredient. Obviously, everything that goes on top of a pizza is important, but without a good base, you can't make a good pizza. And the one thing that I get a lot of questions on is why my dough did this. So I made a dough that so-and-so is so famous, and I made his famous dough, and it was the worst pizza I ever made. What went wrong? And it's finding those little pieces of the process that take us from good to great. So I want to talk to more about this, all right?
Awesome. So we're going to start off with really the top 3 things, Leo, that you think are most important when people are making dough. What would you say would be number 1?
So whenever we talk about dough, obviously the biggest ingredient is our flour, right? Flour is important, not by, I won't get into brands, right? We're not talking specifically brands. I'm talking about what's specifically inside the bag. Because while most of it looks like it's white, the type of grain and the place that it was sourced changes the strength of that flour. If you tried to make a pizza with cake flour, it wouldn't be a very good pizza because there's not enough strength in cake flour, which is about 8% protein, let's say, to raise the dough and then retain all the bubbles inside. Because what's going to happen, it's so weak that it collapses on top of itself. So we have a range. We say that most of the doughs that we deal with when we talk about flour are somewhere about 11% sometimes, right? To about 14% protein. All of a sudden, we shrank the world, right? Between 11.5 to 14% protein, the types of pizzas that you can make with those change because the weaker flours, let's say something that's around 12%. Let's just use 12% example, like this Neapolitan dough right here. This Neapolitan dough was made in the traditional method, mixing flour, water, salt, and yeast. This dough never went into the refrigerator. This is why you don't see any water inside over here. This is why at almost 3 p.m., this dough is almost 24 hours old, never refrigerated. The art of Neapolitan pizza is in its process, and a lot of it goes back to the selected flour because if a dough has to be stretched to 24 hours, we can only put so much water in it. We have to put a certain amount of salt in it. We're not going to use all this crazy amounts of yeast. This dough barely has any yeast in it. Why? Because if I would have put too much yeast in this show hall in the desert, this would have already come out of the box, right? But as we start talking about increasing the number of days that this dough lives, now we're going to be talking about refrigerating it. And that's where temperature comes in, right? Ambient temperature, let's call it about 70, 72 degrees in here, right? All of a sudden you go into a refrigerator that generally our refrigerators are about 36, 38 degrees. My refrigerators at all the pizzerias that I open up, we have a separate dough room or an area for our doughs at around 40 to 41 degrees Fahrenheit for storing your dough. The yeast is never all dormant, meaning it's not really gone to sleep. It's working, but it's working slowly. So Mother Nature and the process of fermentation are taking a dough and all of a sudden making it lighter. So when you eat this, we talk about digestibility, right? When you eat this pizza, you can eat a whole pizza. If anybody's ever been to Italy, right? One pizza, one person. You sit down with a knife and fork, you eat as a meal. And when you're done, you get up. Oh, I'm full, I ate. And guess what? We're going to go walk and have a gelato, right? And there's still room, and you don't feel like you just ate a brick, like when you have the hot and ready for $5, right? At the mall or wherever you go, that you feel like you ate a brick, right? This is where the balance of now selecting the right flour comes from. If I have a dough that needs to be somewhere about 24 hours, general rule is that we want to be somewhere about 12 to maybe 13% protein, right? And we're talking blanketed. I'm not talking Italian versus American and 00. I'm talking in general, right? All of a sudden we say, well, I got to get to that 48-hour mark, 2 days, right? Without changing much, taking a 13% protein flour, maybe 13.5%, that'll easily get you to 48 hours, maybe up to even 72 if you go with that 13.5. But as soon as you get into that 14 plus, or maybe you've ever heard of like the flour called Manitoba, right? The strongest grain in the entire world comes from Manitoba, Canada, and they literally call it Manitoba, no matter what. If you're making panettone, if you're making things that require a lot of water and very long maturation, we want a very heavy flour. But what happens? It takes multiple days for that heavy flour to break down. Let's say Mother Nature needs to break down complex carbohydrates and turn them into simple, which our body can process. And this is where we get these beautiful light eating pizzas, right? So we covered flour and we covered temperature, right? All of a sudden we have 13% flour, 13.5% flour, and we want to make that dough go in 24 hours. I have no choice. I showed up in Dubai. They have 1 sack of flour to do everything. It's hot outside, and this is all we have. Guess what? Now we adjust temperature. We make that yeast work a little bit faster. We let Mother Nature keep going a little quicker. And all of a sudden, we can take those higher protein flours and make them eat nice and light and airy. The advantage of working with higher protein flours is that higher protein flours absorb a ton of water. And if you want to make a light and airy and crispy pizza, the more water you put, the better. Why? Who can tell me what temperature water turns to steam or water boils? 212 degrees Fahrenheit. As soon as that happens, what are most of our ovens set to? At least 500, right? As soon as water turns to a boil, guess where it goes? Bye-bye. It's gone. And what's left? A cloud. The structure that held that dough ball together, right? Now, another important piece is the mixing, right? In the United States, we use more planetary mixers than any other country to make doughs. Why? Because when pizza arrived here in the 50s, after World War II, let's say, or maybe just on the cusp, right? That was the only machine that was here. It was a bakery machine, right? The Hobart mixer was used to make batters and creams, right? It had a whisk, so you could make meringues. But guess what? There was also a hook, so we can make doughs with it. The New York pizza, which I have a New York dough right here, traditional New York dough. This dough has almost a similar hydration to this dough, but they look very different. Why? Because this dough was refrigerated. This dough is made with a flour that, this is Caputo Americana Super, 15.5% protein. But I blended this. Why? Because I needed to use this today. So this is 70% of what's called Americana, which is 14% protein, and 30% Americana Super. So all of a sudden, I created this master super crazy mix to go with my needs. I've got almost 70% water here. 67 if we were counting. Or this is almost 65, right? Very close. I can make a dough go faster by adjusting the strength, right? Planetary mixing, it's all about the gluten that we create, and this gluten net, we call it, right? And the whole job of the gluten net is to do what? hold air. Hold air from where? The yeast, right? So all of a sudden, this thing puffs up. If that gluten net doesn't have enough strength, meaning that the flour doesn't produce a strong enough gluten structure to hold all that air, guess what's going to happen? It goes in the oven, it puffs up. It comes out, and guess what? All that steam gets trapped inside of here. That steam is heavy. And guess what happens to that structure? It starts to smash on top of itself. A lot of questions that I get at Pizza University, I'm sure you get on the forum, is that, hey, my pizza inside looks like it's really doughy, right? It didn't rise right. It must be a bad dough formula. It's always that, and everyone blames the yeast. It's the yeast guys, right? But more than likely, it was probably just something in the process. And you have to be very careful when you use a planetary style mixer, because that planetary style mixer is very destructive to that gluten net, meaning that the bowl is fixed. That hook is literally pressing the dough against the side of the bowl, and it's tearing it a little bit. All of a sudden, move fast forward, and you got a spiral type mixer. The bowl spins in unison with the little corkscrew in the back. Dough temperature is much cooler, less stress on the dough, and you create this bigger, beautiful, airy dough. Same thing, just two different mix times, right? So when we get all these together, there's a lot of pieces to the equation to make that happen. But when we say that those three pieces are the most critical, it's because of that. Dive into the flour and understand what's in that bag, and you'll make a better pizza. You'll make a pizza work at your schedule. Just because all the cool kids on social media say, dude, I got a high hydration dough at 72 hours, 96, 10-day dough. Who's got 10 days of storage in their walk-in cooler? Maybe if you're making one pizza at a time in your backyard in an uni, right? Go and make 300-400 a night in a pizzeria and tell me about your high 10-day dough. As an industry guy, I've been doing this all my life. I started when I was 13 years old. I'm going to be 50 in June. Do the math. I'm a lifer, right?
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. But what's the point? The point is this. It didn't always have this amount of knowledge, right? As time went on, we learned things. We got better ingredients. We got better equipment. Notice, I really haven't talked about any flour, any style. It's just the word flour. If you peel the white label off the outside of the bag, all the bags of flour on the inside are brown. You could have 10 bags of flour in front of you that are all 12% protein, but all 10 will work just a little bit different. There's some called a technical spec. The mill will supply that. You can go online. All that information is readily available. If you're going to get into this business and you're going to start making dough, it's very important to understand what goes into that dough and how to make it work, right? Let's make some pizzas.
Leo, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. So we have flour, yeast, and temperature really are those key components. And like Leo said, you have to do what works best for your schedule. Getting on that consistent schedule, getting on a timeline that works best for you will help to make you more successful as a shop owner. Leo, what's your favorite type of pizza dough that you make?
My favorite to work with is Roman. Why? Because it's a higher hydrated dough. It's got a pre-ferment called biga in it, right? It's a fun dough to work with. It's full of air bubbles. It's full of gases. If you're going to take a picture for social media, it's the one that everybody shows the side shot because it's all these giant air bubbles, right? It's not the quality of the pizza maker. It's the quality of what they did to it, right? That's my fun one. I'm a New York pizza guy. If you really want to know my pizza, I'm a traditional Neapolitan guy, right? I'm an ambassador for the Associazione Verace Pizza Napolitana for the United States from Chicago. This is my specialty. If you ask my friend Giulio Adriani down over there, if he can even hear me, and you ask him, what does Leo do? He say, you're the only one that still makes this pizza, Leo. Why? Because this goes back 300 years. And you want to know about the art of pizza making? As simple as this is, that's what makes it hard. Because it's the understanding of temperature. It's the understanding of how much yeast, how much salt, how much water. I get killed by the trolls when I post this. Why? Because I say there's days when this is 55, 56% hydration. And then left. What are you making, biscuits? 55%? What is this, Chicago Tavern? Why 55%? Because that dough is really tight. And guess what? When it's 95, 100 degrees in Napoli, who's slowing this down? It's that tight dough that is resisting opening up. When do all the skilled pizza makers work? Do they work lunch or do they work dinner? They work dinner. You want your rock stars working dinner. And I just told you this dough has to last 24 hours. So when do the rock stars need to work? Not when the dough balls are beautiful like this. This is when the apprentice and all the young guys are still working because that's easy to work with. Wait until these all turn square and you have bubbles that want to pop out and the structure now is exaggerated, right? That's where the skill of this comes in. Anybody can do this. This is the one that it's generational, right? 300 years. Now,
And Leo, I think a big point, we talked about making the dough, what goes into it, the biggest important parts. The other question I see shop owners ask all the time is storing the dough. So they make this perfect dough ball, they're so excited about it, and yet it might explode overnight or it might not turn out right. Could you talk a little bit about handling and storing after you make the dough and what that looks like?
so this is actually a great question because a lot of times, especially, how many people own restaurants here? Some people own restaurants, some people are brand new, some are just hungry, working in booths. Yeah, we got a good mix. Okay. Yeah, it's well, friends. Now, this dough is at the end of its life, right? Would I take this at the end of the night and say, oh, I can't go anymore on this. Guess what? Throw it out. No, we never throw away dough. Never throw away dough. Because there's so many options of what can happen, right? The first one would be, because this is real Neapolitan dough, there's not a lot of yeast in it. So if I was to take, I'll do this live, okay? And if you have a Neapolitan pizzeria, I'm gonna show you guys how to make the classic Neapolitan, it's not a baguette, because a baguette comes from France, right? But we have like this filone. We have a type of bread that we make in pizzerias. And if you go to a Neapolitan pizza joint and you got crostini and all these other things, you'll see this made, right? So we take 3 of these dough balls, right? And the reason I'm saying 3 is because generally you need about 3 at about 280 grams, which these just happen to be. 3 dough balls at the end of the night. Now, pay attention to the size here, okay? I just told you that there's no yeast in this. Very little. For every liter of water, this has about 0.75 grams. Not even 1 gram of yeast per liter of water because it's so hot. I'm gonna take 3 of these doughs, stack them on top so the sticky sides are touching, and then one of them put the sticky side on top, okay? I'm gonna make a loaf. I'm gonna put this here so you guys can see. I'll make a loaf. Square. The pads of my fingers like I'm playing a piano. Sabrina, I had somebody for 3 days troll me on social media telling me this is not how you play the piano. I know, I don't play the piano, but to me this is kind of what it looks like. All right, take this, look, dimple, dimple, dimple. What did we just do? You want to know why I love to make Roman pizza? It's because of all those bubbles, all those air bubbles that are locked in here. So now all of this gas is trapped inside of this network. If I come back on the sides and dimple this even more, this can't get out. Now, if we take a page from the French bakers, I'm going to turn this sideways. Take this end, roll it about 1/3 of the way in, and push this seam down. Grab this, roll it towards you, and push this seam down. Roll. What's happening to all of those air bubbles in here? Anybody just yell. Ha! Trapped. I love this guy. It's trapped in here. We're creating this kind of laminated croissant looking thing without being there. All of a sudden, all these air bubbles now. think of what the greatest ciabatta bread you ever seen looks like. It's all full of irregular air bubbles, right? Take this, roll it the rest of the way. Here's the seam, okay? Now this seam, if we were making a baguette, we use the back of our palm and we do one of these. And we close this. From here, now I got this little log. We're stretching. My hands are flat, back and forth, stretching, elongating. How big, Leo? Chef Leo, how big do I have to make it? Great question. Smash the ends. I want to make this as big as the dough box. Because just like I have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of dough, I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4 of these filone. At the end of the night, you have one of those beautiful ovens like that black one right there. It's got wood fired, coals in there. We spread the coals, close the door. We fill the box with all the old dough. Take this, put a lid on it, put it on the bench, which is usually somewhere in the area. By the time you get back in the morning, the next day, this will look like these, puffed up full of air. Sweep all the coals out of the oven. Sweep all the dust, everything off. Take a board like this. Oh, I got a little bonus over here. What happened? Okay. Take a look at this.
Of magic.
Put a little semolina down the middle. This now is full of air. Day 2, imaginary, AI. Put this here. Okay. Stretch it. Get yourself a knife or a fancy razor blade called a lame. Make some slits just like this along the sides. I can't make this up. Gassy dough, just in the process. Can you guys see how many air bubbles are already in this? And this didn't even rise yet. Tomorrow, this will be this big. We make these cuts, and you can already see where we're going. Stick it inside that wood-fired oven, even that gas-fired oven, which on day 2, if you get a good oven like these Ferraris over here, guess what your temperature is going to be when you come into the restaurant the next morning? Probably around 400. What temperature do we bake bread at? Probably right there. So if we had the floor full of coals, we sweep that all out, my floor is still nice and hot because as those embers turn black and cool down, the floor is still nice and hot. So we're probably still around 450. We launch this on top, close the door of the oven, and like any of my family that's from Calabria, that we still make bread in communal ovens, a lot of us in Cosenza, right? This, all of a sudden in the chamber, releases steam. That brick oven, all those individual stones, guess what doesn't come out of the oven? The steam. Make bread, you inject steam into the chamber. The old school oven, you don't need to do that. It does it by itself. You pull this thing out and you just made the greatest artisan bread with Neapolitan dough. Don't ever throw away old dough. Rick Anderson, what's up, dude? Now, last thing I'm going to say. There's another trick that we do. It's called pasta di riporto. Riporto means to recycle, renew. Pasta is our dough, right? You're going to make dough anyway the next day. Why take this dough and throw it in the garbage at night? Throw it in the cooler. Tomorrow morning when you come in, if you've got a pen and paper, I'm going to give you a secret right now. Right? Golden nugget right here, live at Pizza University in the desert. For every liter of water in your dough formula, add 500 grams of old dough. 500 grams of old dough. Please make it that you're using Neapolitan to Neapolitan. Don't mix the Neapolitan with the cranberry walnut that you made for the whatever, right? It's not going to turn out the way you thought it would. But all of a sudden, this old dough has all of those fermented flavors, all of that notes. As that yeast, that little bit of yeast, guess what it still gave off? Ethyl alcohol, carbon dioxide, and it's perfumed. And all of a sudden, you could take a white Wonder Bread-like dough, which generally traditional Neapolitan pizza doesn't have much flavor to it, right? It's flour, water, salt, and yeast. We didn't do much to it. All of a sudden, you're reusing the old dough, and you've got a full day of fermentation flavor under control that's not overdone. Go about mixing the dough the way you always mix it. Just put the dough, the old dough chopped up in pieces, inside the bowl in some water. Guess what happens to all that acidity? It washes out into the water. and then add the fresh flour and everything else and build your dough on top of it. And I'm telling you, it's going to look like you put Viagra in it. I'm going to be honest with you. It literally is going to have this crazy, insane extra structure full of air bubbles, right? And we have a process called an autolyse, right? And sometimes we do an autolyse. We mix flour and water together, let it sit for an hour, then we finish the dough. And that process of letting that water absorb into the flour ahead of time does two things. It reduces our mix time, but it also increases the structure, right, of this dough. So all of a sudden, these beautiful open airy doughs will look like something that maybe had a pre-ferment, a biga, a poolish, without the investment of 14, 16 hours to create the pre-ferment. This is already sat out. It's going to give us all those beautiful flavors and notes. We never throw dough in the garbage. There's always something to do. This is my favorite because now you can't buy bread as cheap as you can make it on your own in a pizzeria. And I don't care how short we are on skilled labor, that right now we can't find anybody to work, right? But you definitely can find somebody to take 3 dough balls, press them on top of each other, and press and roll, straighten it out in a box and leave it on the counter and go home. Pretty simple, right? That's my answer.
Leo, thank you so much for sharing the handling of the dough, how to save extra dough. We don't want to be wasteful. Leo, I really want to take a USB of all your knowledge and just insert it into my brain. I'm sure everyone here does want to do that.
Me too.
Something I also want to go over now is really once we have that dough, it's ready to be made, is stretching and technique. Could you take me through a hands-on demo of how you approach it?
Yeah, so now there's a difference between New York dough and Neapolitan dough. Besides the water, right? We talked about the water. The Neapolitan dough is wet, and when we do it, not that it's wet, it's a little more sloppy, right? Because this dough has been sitting out for a day. And it does take a little skilled hand to manage this, especially when you see that this dough now no longer looks like a ball, it looks like a square, right? If you go to a Neapolitan pizzeria and you get the pizza on the plate, you know the white plate, and it's got 4 corners on the circle, it's because you know that that dough is going to be so beautiful and the flavor of it's going to be so beautiful. If you're bothered by these points, we have a way that we could take the points, bring them together, pinch them closed, and then cut them off. And guess what? I got a round dough ball. Yes, does this look ugly on the top? Sure it does. But guess where the sauce and the cheese are going? No one's ever going to see it. And it's par for the game. Now, as we stretch this out, I'm using my hands. I kind of massage it round again, playing a piano. I leave one finger from the edge. We call this the cornicione, right? The frame, the cornice, I'm going to leave that undisturbed. I'm pushing forward from the middle to the edge. Why? Because all the gas that's in here, I want it to finish on the cornicione. If I take the dough, flip it over, and start in the middle and go the opposite direction, guess what I just did? I kept all the dough and air together. If I start pressing from this end, going to the end, all the pressure of that gas builds up. And guess what happens by the time I get here? Bye-bye, it's gone. My pizza will be lighter and airier than the next guy's just from that one simple process. From here, I take the dough, turn it sideways, and I'm gonna press this the opposite way, creating almost this waffle pattern. And anywhere you can see between my fingers is an air bubble. Again, my pizza, even Neapolitan pizza, will eat just a little crispier wherever I found one of those bubbles. From here, the top of the dough ball, the right way, the top of the dough ball is always the top of the pizza. But when I have people that are training, I teach it opposite. And people are notorious for making sound clips where they don't miss the front, they miss the front part of the whole conversation, and they give that, oh, the best way to do this is just take the dough, turn it over, make the top of the dough ball the bottom. That's not what I said. If you have a problem launching a pizza in the oven, the outside of this dough has a skin on it, very small skin. By making that the bottom of the pizza, this will slide, and guess what happens on your pizza peel? Pizza goes in, And guess what happens? The pizza drops onto the stone and all the ingredients stay with it. They don't go into the back of the oven with the pepperoni and the mushrooms and everything else, right? From here, Neapolitan pizza is the only one that has its own actual method. And they call it scaffold. How many times we got over here? I don't care where you came from or where your family is from now. How many of you were kids and acted the fool and screwed up, and all of a sudden your grandma came around and that's a scaffold. When we do this, I'm pressing my fingers against the cornicione, not going over, lift, pull, turn. In real time, this looks like this. 2 fingers of flour. That's all the flour. That's all the flour? Yeah, that's all the flour. Why? Because flour burns. I had some people that came up to me earlier saying, Chef, all the pizzas burn. As soon as I put them in the oven, they're black. I make pizza napolitana. Why? It's probably used too much of this. Notice I didn't stretch the dough inside of here. Are any of you guys doing it? You don't have to admit it. I'm just telling you, if you're doing this and you're planning to bake over 700 degrees, you're probably burning the bottom of your pizzas. And people are Instagramming the bottom of your pizza, not the top, for the wrong reasons, right? From here, now I got this beautiful stretched dough. Pizza napolitana a schiaffo. And you see how beautiful that moves. The other one I've got is this New York dough. New York dough is beautiful. Dusting flour on the top. I'm not using any fancy tools. They got the thing that looks like the drywall thing, you know what we're talking about? You can use one of those. This is all, I've always got one of these in my backpack. TSA never bothered this. And I've always got this with me, and this is my preferred tool. This is from Red Star, LaSalle. They're right here, somewhere here. They're giving these things away. I go from the side, I'm gonna pull the dough out. The dough is in the same shape as it was here. All the gas is inside. Now this dough, a little more tricky. Why? Because the dough is bigger than my small hands. Let me see your hand. You got the same problem I got. I see guys, you got me. You know how many pizzas I could make if I had hands like yours? Same thing. Let's start from the middle, move to the outside, leaving one finger from the edge. Make that cornicione, turn like I just showed you, do it the opposite way. And the idea is that I don't want a New York pizza with a cornicione that looks like this. And then the middle looks like a piece of paper. That's not right. The middle should look uniform and balanced. And when you look at it, it should have fine little pinhole bubbles all the way through. The cornicione should not be like this. It should be like this, maybe the size of your thumb, right? This is proper. Go to New Jersey, it's a little smaller. Why? Because they press a little bit farther, right? When we do this, I use that slab technique for everything because that's the way I learned it forever, right? But I use that slab technique for everything because that's the way I learned it forever, right? But there's a lot of people that maybe they do put some flour down and they do this stretch, right? Sometimes the dough hangs over the side, right? The excess flour falls. We could take this, do the classic New York stretch and make that beautiful black sweater all. We can do one of these, right? But the idea is that as I stretch this, if you guys look, you can actually see the air bubbles that are locked inside of this dough, right? So all of a sudden, if I'm taking this and kind of pulling along the cornicione, you see what I'm doing here? I can make this as big or as small as I want. The pro move is to say, I want to make a 20-inch pizza, but I'm only going to stretch it maybe 16, maybe 18, right? Let's see where we're at. Hey, I could put that bed sheet on it. They like cover my bed with it.
And you're not measuring with a ruler. How do you measure out your dough depending on what type of size you're trying to get?
So sometimes a pizzeria will have one board with multiple sizes and they'll draw a circle. The only thing I don't like about drawing a circle is that the famous move, once this pizza is topped, is we gotta make sure it's not sticking. So what do? And what happens to the pizza? It shrinks. So then I gotta stack there again and I gotta do this, right? However, like I was just saying, if we want to make a 20-inch pizza, let's stop at, I don't know, 17 and a half. Let's build a pizza. Let's do this quick because I know we're going to run out of time. I'm going to take some tomato sauce. A couple of these because I like tomatoes. These are good tomatoes. I'm going to spread the sauce. Don't go over with that one finger from the edge, right? If I'm going to give you a guideline, say 2 fingers from the edge is where the sauce ring should be. Don't go over the edge because guess what tomatoes have a lot of naturally? Sugar. And guess what burns in the oven at high heat? Sugar. So if you don't want to burn the edge on the edge of your pizza, don't put the sauce over the edge. It's not rocket science, right? All of a sudden, we spread this like this. One of the things that I love is when I use sauce like this, my sauce doesn't have a lot in it. My sauce is generally 2 ways. Italian, where I've got whole peeled tomatoes or ground tomatoes and sea salt, stop. Or I've got a variation of that. For every number 10 can, you know the cans of tomatoes? For every can of tomatoes, I put between 20 to 30 grams of salt, depending on how salty you want it. 1 clove of fresh garlic, 3 to 4 nice leaves of fresh basil, and about a 1/4 cup of olive oil, which nobody measures. Don't chop the don't chop the garlic unless you like a ton of garlic, right? It should just be that perfume or that essential oil coming through in the end. We take the garlic clove, smash it, drop it in the sauce, stir everything together, let it sit for a day. Always make it the day before, and then you're here. From here, I like to put a little Parmigiano Reggiano on top. This could even be, I don't know, maybe you're from the Midwest and you like Parmesan with an S better. I don't know, but that's all you.
Leo, do you think that a lot of people overcomplicate sauce?
No, I don't think it's overcomplicated because I just did a place in Dickinson, North Dakota. I did a place in Casper, Wyoming. I just came out from, I think it was Andersonville, just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. Your community is going to dictate what your pizza is like. If people in your area love a ton of dry herbs inside of their sauce, I don't care how much of an artist you are and how much of a professional you are. At the end of the day, you're in business to make money, not friends, right? So guess what's going to be in your sauce? What people are going to pay to come and eat. Now, is there a balance? Yeah, absolutely, because I don't want my pizza reminiscent of what's at the gas station, right? But if all of a sudden we say, you know, people like that little punch of garlic, maybe I could take a fresh clove of garlic, chop it up a little bit, and make it a little bit more intense, instead of saying, I put granulated dry garlic, which guess what happens to that sauce? It's not red anymore. It's muddy brown, right? Dry basil. Why? Use some fresh basil. Come on, you know how much different this is than using this stuff that's been around for 3 years? This is my point. If you're going to use this, use it under the cheese. I got a little bit of mozzarella, right? This is whole milk shredded mozzarella. I love whole milk because it's full fat. To me, a cheese slice should run a little bit down your arm. I don't know. I'm that guy. When we put the mozzarella on, I go around. And that's it. 2 hands. That's how you know another real pizza maker or someone who does it on the weekends. You don't have time to do this little bit, right? Put whatever else on top, pepperoni, sausage. Last thing we do, give this a shake. Let's do this again. Give this a shake. And now I want to make my 20-inch pizza. Pull it 20 inches. And guess what, folks? You can teach anybody this. They just have to get the basics. If they can make a 16-inch pizza, they can make a 20. If they can make an 18-inch pizza, they can make a 22. You can't make it up. It's as simple.
All right.
With my friends here at Slice, they have an amazing platform, and what they do is amazing. Where can they find you, Sabrina?
You can find us at slice.com. You can find us on Instagram at Slice. And really, we're so thrilled to be partnering with you, Leo, and Pizza University, because at the end of the day, our goal is to really help empower the independent pizza shops just like you, and being able to educate people, let them know oftentimes being an owner, you really are on that island by yourself. And just knowing that you have a community of people around you who are willing to help, willing to give you advice. It's not always competition, guys. It really is about community, because you never know when your dough machine might break, or you run out of an ingredient and your neighbor might be able to help. Same thing with your dough too. If you're looking for a really great platform to meet other shop owners, we have a wonderful Facebook group as well as an Instagram group where people are just asking questions. And as we know, shop owners who are really passionate are really excited to answer them. So definitely connect with us afterwards. We'd love to have you. But